Hello there, and welcome to our first episode of the time-lapse series about recreating the Magic Kingdom in Orlando, Florida. I say first episode because the last episode was mostly about the game in general and my first experience starting the game. So now we actually start on building. So the first question I had multiple months from today was actually how to start properly in the park, actually what to build first in the park. Since I knew from my work on the Anaheim park that especially the beginning, when you start such a big park, the complete map is completely green and nothing is there, and you know it will be so much work to make everything work in the end. But you know, this beginning on working on a new project at the first couple of days and weeks, this first start is often very, you lose motivation if you don't stick to it. And because you see just so little things that make you, okay, I want to continue to work on it because it looks so cool already. And of course, since there's nothing in the park already, I don't have this thing, you know. And that's why we, for the couple of episodes of starting this new project, we will probably have this feeling that I can show you in beforehand this map where you have a full-size park and you now can pick a certain zone that I show you today. So it's a little bit different to the Anaheim series, but you know, a new beginning is always also very helpful and has many positive things. So the biggest one would be that I constantly have this short reaction time to the footage. The footage you see is not older than 2 to 3 days. So I'm obviously not very far ahead of you while recording. And that's also why I know what I'm doing here. So when I showed you, that was the problem maybe by the Anaheim time-lapse series, that I showed footage that was already 7 years old, and I obviously didn't know when I recorded that, in what mood I was, what did bother me at that day, and all those things. I obviously couldn't tell you that story. But here I can tell you that story, and I can also tell you my building experience. And maybe let's talk about that for a second. So the footage you see right now is actually also from the day I first played the game. And the biggest thing that bugged me on that day was actually when I did this. As you see, I do this, those arcs and those columns basically out of single resort pieces. There are those really nice pieces that are perfect, I think, for this job. And the biggest thing that bugged me there was just that I couldn't really select them in one go with this frame selection. And when I continued to build now for 11 hours without this technique, at the end I was really furious about it. And I couldn't believe it, because why would Frontier leave out such an important feature to build efficiently? And luckily, when I released my video, someone commented under it, and I want to credit him. It's ArthurGSP2331. I hope I spelled that correctly. I want to thank you because you figured out how to do multi-select, or what I call frame select, in Planet Coaster 2. I thought it was not possible, but it's actually possible. It's just very inconvenient to figure it out. How multi-select basically works is now that when you have a scenery group and you go into your scenery group, and now you want to select your pieces that you want to select, right? Now you have to actually press the hotkey or the little icon on the right button and multi-select within the building group. Something that would be not really done in Planet Coaster 1 because you just simply frame select it in one go. But again, I thought I didn't thought that inconvenient at first. And it's there. The only thing is, again, that it really is not that great optimized. It's just there are too many clicks, I think. So first I have to go into my building group. Then I have to activate multi-group. I mapped it to the Alt key. So I press the Alt key. Then comes the multi-select screen. Then I can basically, as in the prequel, select my pieces. And then I have actually to press a button that says confirm. I mean, are you kidding me? I mean, this is completely unnecessary. Because why can't we have it just like in Planet Coaster 1? It was golden. It worked straight out of the box. And, you know, those 2 extra steps of pressing the multi-select button and then confirm it, you could save that. And it takes up time. And maybe it takes up only half a second. But imagine for a second how many times you will use that feature over the whole period of this project. So make it at least toggleable. So you can switch it on and off, and it's just an option there to have. But what I really like now is that you can, when you made such a selection now, and you have it in, for example, a scenery group, you can change the color now. And it doesn't matter if there are different items in there. So if you have basically 3 different items and you have them in one scenery group, and then you just select your scenery group, you can just change the color on it. So that's of course a great feature to have in your building palette, basically. But another thing that is not so great, and it's also related to color, is that it doesn't remember what color a certain piece had before I select another one. So it resets the color when you take a different piece from the shelf. So both of those features, they counteract each other. So because when I have now multiple elements that are not colored in the right color in beforehand, I just place them down. I group everything. So I select everything, group it, and then I can just recolor the whole thing by itself. But again, especially when you do rock work and nature things where you have to recolor something, it's really a pain, because why do it in the first place? Just fix it. That we have this efficiency in building, you know? And you know, I think that lacks the most here, because I think it's this not knowing. I mean, Frontier listened to many players and creators during this playtest time, I think. And they listened because they added switch tracks, they added so many new things. Also, this path system is completely nuts. But I feel like they listened, but they don't really understand what we need or how they have to implement it, that it works the best in our interest. It's just very weird for me to explain it, but I think that's the thing that misses here, this appreciation of what we need, not only what we need, but the tiny things on how to implement it in the right way to make it work for us. I think that just misses here. And I mean, I know they will make certain fixes and updates over the next few weeks and months, I'm sure. But why is it not there in the first place, you know? Especially with so much playtesting earlier. And it just doesn't feel right, you know? And also other creators figured it out already, like the Lay Designer or Rudy Rinkamel and other ones. And I can completely agree also to their statements they made about the game. And also, I feel like the developers, I mean, their game has this claim to be a full-priced game that has the appearance to be finished right, or is in such a state that it's finished and not relies too much on future content. And I think too many games in the latest past made that decision to just release it a little bit unfinished. Hey, we fix everything later on when we made some money. I mean, there are many examples where maybe this strategy worked in the end from a lot of early access titles, but mostly those are smaller studios or even only developed by 1 or 2 persons. And so I think Frontier has a different level here. So they can't really rely too much on this excuse, I think. Or should not, at least, I think. Especially since they made Planet Coaster 1 and they made Planet Zoo. I can remember from the alpha stages of Planet Coaster 1, there were so many features missing from the later game. But I could kinda excuse it here because they never done such a game before. But now, after doing 2 titles, and there's just so many things missing here, I don't understand it. Maybe it's a complete different developer team, I think. Many people left maybe from the first and from the Zoo title, and many people joined it, and maybe they didn't really communicate to each other. But I think it lacks just this deep knowledge of a person that knows the game in and out, that knows exactly what tools they need and how to use them in the most effective way to build a realistic or non-realistic park in the game. But before I tell you now also some positive parts about it, I wanted to end this section of the video with just a bunch of things that are still missing. I might can explain why they aren't in the game, but I can't understand it really, you know? So, where are custom images and videos for the billboards? Why is there no weather switch? Why can't I add a light to a display sequencer? Why don't we have dedicated cameras for the display sequencer like in the prequel? Why is there a download limit for blueprints in the game, especially on PC? Where are those park expansions when you have a dedicated UI element on the top left that has otherwise no purpose for it? Why are most items in the game already overscaled and then only limited by 50% in scaling? Why can't I adjust the exact park dimensions in a scenario like in the prequel? Why do paths have curbs that you can't remove? Why is there no height indicator to see how high a path actually is? Why can you scale down certain pieces down to 10% and other pieces only down to 50%? And at last, who had this terrible idea of using a multi-select in that way? Come on guys, you can do it so much better. I know that they already announced an update, some of those features to be implemented in next updates, but I feel like all those things that I said already, they need to be fixed as soon as possible, because most of the said things were already in Planet Coaster and Planet Zoo. And the longer it takes them to implement it, the more people will lose interest into the game and eventually stop playing because of this unfinished appearance in which state the game is. And please, do not see it as a provocation, see it as helpful feedback that I try to provide, figure out what needs to be done to make this game a true experience, how it should be, how it could be also. I truly believe this game will be a masterpiece when those things are fixed. And that's also why I said in the previous video that this game is a highlight for me. It still is. It's just not finished. We aren't at the stage where it actually reaches the peak of its performance. And where we still have those little, in Germany we call it Kinderkrankheiten, where you basically have many little tiny things which are not finished, and it looks half-baked basically. But now let's finally talk about the positive things here, because there are many things that I also like. Maybe you saw that little experiment I made 20 seconds ago, where I just duplicated one piece and duplicated it over and over and over and over again. and just try to figure out if there is this limitation anymore, that you are limited to 4,000 or 5,000 pieces to move them. And actually I could place more than that and still be able to move that. But then later on I tried also to use different items and do the same test, and sadly I couldn't move that. So apparently this only works if you have one piece that you have 8,000 or 10,000 of times placed down, then you could do that. So I'm actually thinking about maybe this could work out for an esplanade or something where we have, or like those rooftops, you know, where we have those, you have for each shingle of the roof a separate element. So maybe that would be helpful in that regard. Another thing that I like very much about those wall set pieces is that you have those 1 meter, 2 meter and 4 meter sections of wall set pieces, and those are not limited by any grid. And that's of course great to be able to scale them, but also use them in much more tinier areas. And especially for realistic builds, this is the way to go then. Since I can imagine for Main Street alone, we need so many walls that are plastered, that are out of wood. We have also many wood pieces there in different sizes and forms. So they are really flexible in that regard. So we can make great use on the Main Street. And as you see it here, you have those columns out of individual pieces. And then in between you have this wall, and just to have this nice texture there, it really gives this a feeling, you know. It's not just an art piece like in the prequel. I can use a nice texture on that. And also the other wall on the left with those tiles. When I wouldn't scale them down, they would look just too big, and it would not make sense then in the end. So right now you may wonder why I am now suddenly in Planet Coaster 1 again at my beloved Black Pearl. And it's this thing again about the symmetry. And initially I thought that Planet Coaster 2 would cover a symmetry tool or mode, which would allow you to make your builds symmetrical, especially for, as you see it here, this arch about this tunnel would be greatly helpful in that. And it's just me, because I thought, wait, there is a symmetry mode coming? Meanwhile, completely ignoring the fact that it only be allowed for scenery that you attach to rides. Yeah, but so that was the reason why I looked back into my old Black Pearl, since I forgot how to actually make something symmetrical. And so this technique still works. It's basically where you place something on your world axis and then you rotate it twice to get it into the location where it should be. It's not perfect symmetrical, but it's basically in the location where it should be. But something that comes to my mind when I see this is that we will probably get very high piece counts later on. So alone for this tunnel, I think I used over 3,000 or 4,000 pieces alone. And remember, the same exact tunnel is on the opposing side of this Main Street. But I feel, since it's the entrance to the park, there's a different scale of importance here. And especially when you enter the park, this is the first thing that your eyes will catch. And if those things are super detailed, your brain will basically think that everything else in the park is also as detailed as this. Maybe you saw earlier that I did this little sign inside the tunnel where it says you have 3 directions to go. You go either to the buses, to the ferry, or to the monorail. And I really like this concept that all of those 3 options are actually possible to be recreated within the game. All those 3 things are in the game. So we have the ferry boat where we have this ferry spawn point where we can place down. Then we have just this bus spawn point as well that we can use. And we have, of course, our beloved Monorail. And it makes me just very happy to see something like that. Because in the first game, I had this question about the park. Where would my guests basically spawn in the park? Since most of them would be coming, of course, from outer the park's borders. I placed down in that park and in the Anaheim park, I placed it basically inside the ticket booths where you would buy your ticket and they basically walk out of the ticket booth. So you could say, yeah, they basically bought a ticket there and now they enter your park. So I always try to tell a story here where it's, in this case, it's basically a visual storytelling. And I just love that this game gives you that option so that you can choose now where in our park, in the Orlando park, it makes perfect sense then. And just imagine this later view of our main street with the park in the background. And in front you have this little sea where your ferry boat drives around. We maybe use those pistons or those ability to use this ride scenery attached to a coaster, and where you basically place a boat then there, and where a ferry boat basically drives in front of it. I mean, we can make so many things there to make this scene so immersive and lively, you know. So at this point, I think this will conclude today's episode. We made our very first building, the little entrance tunnel in front of Main Street, and it gives us the decent base to continue on the actual railroad station in the next episode. So far, I hope you enjoyed. If you did, subscribe, like or comment. Check out the Discord server and watch my other videos. Thank you for watching. I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.